What's up, guys? Anthony Cornett here from Without Apology. Today we're going to be starting our third and final episode on Is the Bible Accurate? If you've not went back and listened to the other two episodes, I want to encourage you to do so. I would like for you to start there and kind of see where we have built up to. I also want to give just a little plug for, why the purpose behind this podcast is, yes, to give you information, yes, to give you, facts, but to make you critically think, to make you ask questions. Is what Anthony's saying true? To go study it out for yourself, right? I'm a firm believer that nobody should take anybody's word for it. I don't care if it's your pastor. I don't care if it's your, mentor. I don't care who it is. If they're telling you something, you should go find that out for yourself and make sure that what they are saying is true, and making sure that what they're saying is accurate also. And so that's the hopes, is that as I bring this information to you, that it'll spark curiosity, it'll spark questions, and that you will take those questions and you will find and you will have your own foundation inside of the Word of God and inside Jesus Christ. And so I'm excited to get started on this. Let's get started on Without Apology.
Welcome to Without Apology, everyday apologetics for the everyday guy.
All right, guys, what's up? Anthony Cornett here, your host at Without Apology. And so, again, if you've not listened to the other two episodes of this, part one and part two of Is the Bible Accurate, you should go back and listen to those before you continue on from here. But last week, or I should say last episode, we started talking about the 6 E's. From, actually, matter of fact, I get this from I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist. If you've not read that book, this is not a paid advertisement. Every Christian should read that book. It's fantastic. But he talks about early testimonies, eyewitness testimonies, embarrassing testimonies, excruciating testimonies, expected testimonies, and extra-biblical testimony. And we got through 4 of them: the early testimony, eyewitness testimony, embarrassing testimony, and excruciating testimony. And just a quick rundown. So we have the earliest manuscripts. We have the most manuscripts, right? We have eyewitness testimonies, right? From the apostles and all this good stuff. We have embarrassing testimonies. So the things that are recorded not only are the reason why we believe that it's not a made up story is because of things like the embarrassing testimonies, the fact that women made it to the tomb first, and Peter was called Satan, and Paul was being called out, or Peter was being called out by Paul, and these things that if you were making up a story, you wouldn't put inside the Bible, right? You wouldn't put inside the story because it makes you look like a fool. And so, these things give us confidence that what is recorded is accurate. It's history. It's not something that is fabricated. It's not something that is made up. It's not something that they put in place because they are wanted to be known for history, whatever it is, all the excuses that come with it. But then we go to the excruciating testimony, which is the fact that all of the disciples died except for John the Revelator, right? Who was history tells us that they boiled him. He didn't die. And so they banished him to the island of Patmos, which is where he wrote the book of Revelations. And so, other than that, these people, they didn't do it for glory. They didn't do it for, money. They didn't do it for any of those things. They all died excruciating deaths. They were beheaded. They were, Peter was crucified upside down. John, again, boiled alive. I mean, these are awful. These were awful ways to die. And so, why would they die for a known lie? That's the thing. And so it doesn't make any sense at all why somebody would die in such a way for a lie. So today we're going to be talking about expected testimonies. We're going to be talking about extra biblical testimonies. And so, your expected testimonies is exactly that. What do we know about the New Testament from the Old Testament? What was expected to be in there, right? When you look at the prophecies that Jesus fulfilled, and I'm not going to spend a whole bunch of time here because there's you could spend podcast on just doing this, and we're not that's not my intentions. My intentions is to pique your interest for you to go study this out for yourself. But when you get into the book of Isaiah, you get into Psalms, you get into all these different things that the things that lay out in the Old Testament is exactly what happened in the New Testament, right? They say Jesus fulfilled something like 360 plus prophecies, and that is absolutely crazy, right, to even think of. I mean, when we think, and here's the thing, that the prophecies that he fulfilled were not like, well, I guess you could say those were prophecies that were fulfilled. Like, I guess you could say he fulfilled that, if you kind of shifted it this way or you looked at it. No, they were like accurate, like 100%. His death, his burial, his resurrection, the life that he lived, the miracles that Judas, all these different things. I mean, it's crazy. I heard a mathematician one time. This blew my mind, and I'm excited to share it with you. But I heard a mathematician say one time that, and I wish I could remember his name, but I cannot. And I wish I could give him credit for this, but he said that the odds of Jesus fulfilling 8 prophecies. Okay, now Jesus fulfilled 360 plus, and I know some people debate that, but anyways, 360 plus prophecies. Even if the odds of Jesus fulfilling 8 prophecies, 8 of them, would be the same as if you filled the state of Texas 2 feet deep in quarters, and you painted 1 quarter red, placed it anywhere in the state, anywhere in the pile, anywhere in there, and you jumped out of an airplane blindfolded and landed on it. I mean, that's impossible. It's impossible. The odds of Jesus fulfilling 8 prophecies, impossible. Without the help of the Holy Spirit. I mean, it's fascinating. It's fascinating. And so we are seeing prophecies being fulfilled before our very eyes. Look at what's happening in Israel right now. Look at 1945 when Israel became a nation again, and all these different things. I mean, I hear people say, I wish I could have lived in the biblical times. Well, welcome here. We are witnessing prophecies being fulfilled constantly. And so it's absolutely phenomenal, which is one of the reasons why we can believe that the Bible is accurate, because the prophecies that are in them have been fulfilled, right? And the thing about prophecy is that you're basically telling the future, right? I mean, how do they know? How do any of us know? How does this happen? Well, it's of God. That's the point. The Bible is inspired by God, right? I mean, that's what it is. And that the fact that prophecy has been that way, have been fulfilled in the way that it has, proves that God has ordained and God has inspired it the way that he did. And so, when you look at the Old Testament, the New Testament lays out just the way that you think it should. And, for the most part, especially Jesus' life. And so, and so that's exciting. So we're going to go on to extra biblical testimonies. I thought this was absolutely fascinating. So do we have any extra biblical testimonies of the life of Jesus, or anything that can confirm what we read as the New Testament today? And Of course, all these guys have got funky names, so you're going to have to just bear with me, right? Of course, the most famous one everybody knows about is Josephus, who was a Jew, who was a historian, was captured by the Roman Empire in 70 A.D. when they conquered Jerusalem. And instead of him taking his life, like most of them, he went to live with the Romans and become a historian and wrote the history of, I don't know if you've ever heard the Antiquities of the Jews was written by Josephus. And so you have him, you have Tacitus, you have Suetonius, Tullius, Philion. You have government officials like Pliny the Younger, Emperor Trajan, Emperor Hadrian. I know. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I don't even know how to pronounce most of these people. But you also have other outside sources, including the Jewish Talmud, the Greek writer Lucian. You also have people who were like they were anti-Christians. They hated Jesus. They hated the way. They hated all this. People like Celsus, Celsus, Tacitus, again the Jewish Talmud. All these people mention Jesus, even if it's in a negative way. They still confirm Jesus by mentioning him, right? And so when you look at all of the outside stories or the outside testimonies, these are people who they never claimed to be Christians. They never, didn't have any affiliation to the disciples. They didn't have any affiliation to Jesus. They didn't have, most of them, like Josephus lived afterwards, shortly afterwards. But you get a story that kind of sounds like this. Ready? This is the story you get from outside sources. Okay, from outside sources, you get Jesus lived during the time of Tiberius Caesar. He lived a virtuous life. He was a wonder worker. He had a brother named James. He was acclaimed to be the Messiah. He was crucified under Pontius Pilate. An eclipse and an earthquake occurred when he died. He was crucified on the eve of the Passover. His disciples believed he rose from the dead. His disciples were willing to die for their belief. Christianity spread rapidly as far as Rome. His disciples denied the Roman gods and worshiped Jesus as God. Okay, so what does that sound like? That sounds exactly like what we read in the New Testament. Yeah, I mean, seriously, with some little variations, but I mean not even really variations. I mean, that's pretty much it. We know that the disciples believed that Jesus rose from the dead. We know that the disciples were willing to die for what they believed, right? We know that they did die for what they believed. We know that Christianity spread rapidly, not only not just in a small way, right? Not it slowly, but it spread like a wildfire, and because of this, I mean, we have Christianity today. I mean, which is absolutely fascinating to me. The fact that here we are, it's 2,000 years earlier. We're talking about the New Testament. 2,000 years earlier from today. And Christianity is still probably the most hated, seriously, the most hated, the most, sought after as far as trying to disprove, right? Consistently, you won't go anywhere, especially here in America. They say that 9% of the population believe that Christianity is true, or our Bible. I'm sorry, I should rephrase that. 9% of Americans believe are Bible believing Christians. Excuse me. And so, so we are a post-Christian nation. Okay, so what that means is we no longer are a Christian nation anymore, and so you go through anywhere. I mean, people were constantly trying to disprove the Bible. People were constantly trying to, and this is absolutely fascinating to me, because here we are, 2024, and still the most influential man in all of history, and when I say all of history, I mean that literally. All of history is Jesus Christ. That's it. The most influential man today in all of history is Jesus Christ. Every religion has a version of him. Islam says he was a prophet. You have the Hindus, Buddhists, say that he was a good man. Jehovah's Witness thought he was, an archangel, reincarnated. You have the, Mormons. They have their version of Jesus Christ, and so you have all these people that have this version of Jesus Christ. Why? He's the most influential man on the planet that has ever lived on this planet, ever. We have the most documented book on the planet. Literally. Like, that's not an exaggeration. There's nothing that even comes close. The most documented. We have the earliest testimonies. We have the most testimonies. Here's the thing. We're talking about, is the New Testament accurate, right? The entire New Testament points to Jesus, right? So the way the Bible's laid out, if you didn't know, I think I've covered this before, but the entire Old Testament talks about Jesus, right? The coming, it all in its way formulates, the coming of Jesus Christ. The first 4 books of the New Testament, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, talk about the life of Jesus. And the rest of the New Testament point back to Jesus, right? So it's a unified story that points to Jesus. Shout out to the Bible Project, right? And but seriously, I mean, that's exactly what it is. And so you have to ask your question: what do you do with Jesus? Like, how does that still happen? How is he still the most influential? We're not talking about like a story of like a vague story, like a fairy tale. No, this guy is the most influential man on the planet. People use his name as a cuss word. You don't see people going around, oh, Satan, or oh, Muhammad, or oh, Allah. People don't do that. People don't do that. The most influential man on the planet. Why is that? Because he was really here. He really lived. Why do we have the most documented book on the planet of the most influential man on the planet? Because it's real. It doesn't matter what questions you ask. It doesn't matter what you have to bring it back to, what do you do with Jesus? If the New Testament is wrong, if Jesus really didn't, we know for a fact, well, I say for a fact, history tells us, right? We are confident that history is accurate. You won't find a scholar, you won't find a historian that is serious that will deny the fact that Jesus lived, right? That's, and died. It's his resurrection, right? We know that the disciples believe that Jesus resurrected. We know that the New Testament tells us that Jesus resurrected, and the events that happened between his resurrection and his ascension. And so you have to ask yourself the question, what do you do with Jesus? No matter what Why is Jesus the most influential man on the planet? Why is the New Testament the most documented, or the Bible, I should say, the most documented book on the planet? C.S. Lewis said this. He said Jesus was one of three things. He was a lunatic, a liar, or Lord. These people who call him a prophet, these people who call him a good man, there's no way. The claims that Jesus made about being God, and you can say what you want about, Jesus never claimed to be God. Why did they kill him? They killed him because he claimed to be God. That was the exact reason why they killed him. His claims to be God, his claims to the connection with the Father, right? The all these different things. There's no way he was a good prophet, right? Or just a good prophet. There's no way he was just a good man. He was a liar, a lunatic, or he was exactly what he said he was, and he was Lord. That's something that we really have to take in consideration when we are taking in, the New Testament. Yes, are there questions out there that we don't know? Absolutely. Absolutely. Are there questions out there that still are within question? Absolutely. Do any of them deny the deity of Jesus? No. No, the fact that he is the most influential man on the planet, you can't argue that. The fact that we have the most documented book. Okay, so we're going to go back to the New Testament. Since in AD, right? Which, again, the most influential man on the planet. We date our years according to the birth and death of Jesus Christ. I'm just saying, that's the most influential man on the planet. Anyways, yes, I know that they've tried to change that, but for thousands of years it's been BC and AD. So there you go. Anyways, so the most influential man on the planet. So when you come back to it, we have the most documented book in AD. Literally, we have the most influential man on the planet. I mean, go to a country. Go anywhere. I'm talking to a guy in Pakistan. I won't mention his name. Talking to a guy in Pakistan. They're seeing salvations. They're having baptisms. These people are having dreams. Jesus encountered them in their dreams. The fastest growing nation, or the fastest growing church right now, is in China. People are like, well, if you were born in, the reason why you're a Christian is because you were born in America. Why is the fastest growing church in China? In Africa? I mean, these people are coming thousands of people are coming to know Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior. Muslim countries, communist countries, right? It has nothing to do with the location in which you live. Jesus is real. The New Testament is real. It's accurate. And the reason why we can hold it to be accurate is because not only, of course, Jesus, but we have the earliest testimonies. We have the earliest manuscripts. We have the most manuscripts. And again, I want to go back to, I want to reiterate, we're not talking about of spiritual books, right? We're talking about of all of history. It's not even close. There's nothing that holds a candle to the amount of manuscripts that we have for the New Testament. There's nothing that can even, I'm talking within thousands, right? I mean, it's astronomical. And, so we have the earliest, we have the most. The things that the New Testament talks about is not a made-up story. The things, the culture in which, of that day, the things that would have happened, the men would have been a laughing stock, the women would have been beat and killed, because, embarrassing the men the way that they did. I mean, why would you make up a story like that? And if it was a made-up story, how did it hold its validity this long? To where today, not only do we have the most influential man on the planet, but we have the most documented book on the planet. I don't like. I don't. If you don't agree with me, let's have a discussion. I mean, I've said that multiple times. I've had discussion. I've had a discussion with an atheist. Like, let's discuss it. But you have to come down to that. It all boils down to that. What do you do with Jesus? What do you do with the fact that we have the most documented book on the planet? People are like, well, it's been changed over and over and over and over. And I know I've talked about this in the past episodes, but we're kind of wrapping things up here. People have they've rewritten it. It's been changed over the centuries. And all that good stuff. No. How do we know that? Because the documents that we have go back so early that you can't just, if you changed it now, when you went back to the other ones, you could clearly tell that it was changed. Right? I mean, they found the scroll of Isaiah, and I know this is going back to the Old Testament, but they found the scroll of Isaiah in the Dead Sea Scrolls. I don't know, it was like, I can't remember what year it was. But, it said exactly what the Bible says. I mean, it wasn't changed. Like, it is accurate. There's so many facts. There are so many facts that prove that the Bible is accurate. And if the Bible's accurate, Jesus is real. If he's not, then why haven't we found his body yet? You can say it's because of archaeological, but we've not had an archaeological find that disproves the New Testament or the Bible at all. There's never been an archaeological find that disproves the Bible, ever. Yeah. So I thought it'd be kind of cool. There's a guy, many of you may know him or know of him. His name is Sean McDowell. He has a video. It's only like 4 minutes long. I wanted you guys to see this because I thought he did such a good job just kind of wrapping up everything that I've been talking about. And I'll play the video on here. I'll also put the link of it in the show notes. And so let me see if I can do this here.
How do you know that you can trust the New Testament as being reliable? After all, it's a pretty big book. In fact, it's 27 books. Let me give you 3 quick tests about how historians judge any ancient book, and we'll see how the New Testament fares. The first one, we just ask the question, does it claim to be true? It's called the internal evidence test. When you look at the New Testament writers, it's remarkable about how many times they go out of their way to tell us that truth is important. So Luke, who's a medical doctor, begins his gospel by saying, "Many have undertaken to examine the events among us, but I have carefully recorded truth, and in passing on to you, Theophilus, essentially what I know to be true." 2 Peter 1:16, Peter says, "We're not following clever invented tales. We were eyewitnesses." And in 1 John, the author says, "What we have seen, what we have heard, what we have touched with our hands, we proclaim to you." So the biblical writers claim to be eyewitnesses. They claim to have carefully reported truth. And then what's amazing is, as we know from the apostles, they were willing to suffer and willing to die for their belief that this story was true. And they were eyewitnesses of the risen Jesus. That tells me that they really believed that it was true. Now, the second question is, you've heard of the telephone game, how word is passed from one person to the next over time. Well, what about the Bible that's been passed for 2,000 years? Well, scholars have what's called the bibliographical test, where we simply look at how many manuscripts do we have and how early are those manuscripts. The more manuscripts we have, the earlier they are, the better chance we have of reconstructing the original. Well, friends, for many ancient documents, manuscripts are 300 to 500, 1,000 years plus removed. For the New Testament, we have a portion of the Gospel of John at least within 40 or 50 years. The copies of the New Testament are way earlier than any other ancient books that people don't even question. But then the other question is, how many copies do we have? The more copies we have, the better chance of getting the original. Well, for a lot of ancient documents, we have 10, 12, 50, maybe a couple hundred. For the New Testament, we have over 23,000 handwritten copies. This gives us confidence when we compare the copies that we can reconstruct what was originally written down. And number 3, what we call the external evidence test. Is there evidence outside of the book that supports the internal claims? And this is where archaeology and ancient writings come in. You know there's writings outside the Bible that confirm that Jesus claimed to be God, at least that Christians believed that he was God. There's writings that confirm his life, that he purportedly did miracles, where he lived, and that he died. We find this in people like Josephus and Tacitus. And then the archaeological record supports the New Testament as a whole. We know where Jesus was born. We know where Jesus died. In fact, we have the ossuary of Caiaphas, one of the high priests who oversaw the condemnation and ultimately led to the trial and death of Jesus. But now we actually have an inscription from Caesarea pointing to Pontius Pilate, who's the Roman governor who oversaw the trial and condemned Jesus to death. In fact, we have the crucified remains of a man named Yehohanan, who was crucified with nails around the time that Jesus lived, showing the biblical account about crucifixion with nails is correct. Friends, a lot of questions can be raised about the New Testament, but when we look at it broadly speaking, the authors claim to be eyewitnesses. We see accurate information they report, and they were willing to die for it. We see many more manuscripts earlier than any other ancient book. And third, the archaeological record supports it. We have good reason to believe that the New Testament is reliable and true.
All right, guys. Now, listen, Sean McDowell is phenomenal. If you've never checked out any of his stuff, you need to go check out his stuff. Him and his dad. What's his dad's name? You got Sean McDowell. You have Josh McDowell. They wrote a book, Evidence Demands a Verdict. Oh, my goodness. It's fantastic. You should read it. And so, listen, hopefully I have sparked some questions, some curiosity, you learned something through all this. I hope and pray that I have done due diligence to the New Testament in a way that has inspired you to want to ask more questions, inspired you to want to seek more, and I hope that you do exactly that. You take the time, you do your own study, and you do your own research and find out that what we are saying is true. It's not a made-up story. It's not because we're Christians. These are facts. These are things that we have. These are things that you can go and find yourself. This is not a made-up story. And guys, know that I hope just to inspire you. I do. And so if you have any questions, please email me withoutapology.connect@gmail.com. And if you agree, if you disagree, I'd love to hear from you. Email me, comment on the YouTube page, follow, share, all that good stuff. Listen, I've got a book out, Framework for Biblical Masculinity. I wanted to give a plug out for. You can find it on Amazon, or you can go to our website, realmenministries.us, and find a link to the book. And so, guys, again, if you have any questions, if you want to contact us, please do. And as always, go and live for Jesus without apology.
This podcast has been recorded and produced by Real Men Studios.